You know, all those things you've been wondering about? Are you ready to go deeper into the realms of the unknown? I hope you got your walking shoes on, because life is an adventure, and this is the journey. Come on, let's go. Hello and welcome to the show, everyone. It's Wednesday night, and this is the Journey Radio Show. Hey, we're showing up as the She Squatchers. I'm your host, Jen Cruz, and I've got my trusty teammates. I've got Jenna Grover. Hi, Jenna.
Hello, hello, hello.
And Tammy Trico.
Hi, everybody.
We are super excited about tonight's show, everybody. We've got a very special guest. We've been trying to get him on the show for a while, and he's finally available. We've got Rob Kryder on with us tonight, and we were fortunate enough to meet Rob in person and go squatching with him in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan this year. And if you haven't seen the videos that we've uploaded with Rob about that expedition, you must go watch them later. So check it out at She Squatchers Official on our YouTube channel. But hey, Rob, all right, welcome to the show. Are you there? Yes, we're so excited. I'm sad that we only have an hour with you, and because I know that you could probably fill many hours with us. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to share the things that you feel are the most important things to share with the public about your research and what it is that you're doing. So if you could give a little bit of background about yourself, and we can go from there. So you had been doing other kinds of research prior to that. Wonderful. And currently you're living in New Mexico, is that right? Oh, that'll get Jenna excited right there. She loves Texas. Awesome. All right. So I know we had just really enjoyed our time with you in Michigan and all the things that you were sharing with us about the red flags and the tree breaks. And I was just so fascinated by how you were tracking Bigfoot and not even looking down. You were looking up. And I was like, what? You just really opened our eyes to a lot of things that we had never considered before. So I want to thank you for that first and foremost. So we've learned a lot and a lot of feedback on our channel as well from the videos that we shared of you doing that with us. People are really appreciative of you sharing that information with them. I found it particularly fascinating that your research is primarily happening down in the Southwest in New Mexico, and here you are up in the northern part of the United States in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
and the same type of behaviors are happening.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
that was a big deal for me as well. Not to cut you off there, but that was really a big deal for me as well, because it's one thing to test it out over a 100-mile range or 200-mile range where, you might have the same individuals, and transient individuals as well, covering that type of a distance. And then, but to take it all the way to a completely different habitat, to a completely different geographic location with 1,500 miles separating, and such a different latitude change. and then saying basically the same things, right? Being able to do the tracking there, that was pretty neat. It took a little figuring out. I mean, it did take figuring out what they were doing and what type of foliage they were using to do the manipulations, because we don't have the same type of foliage, right? So as a part, we have deciduous trees and all that as well in our flatlands, but they utilize a different type often. So it was interesting to see how they were doing it up there, and yeah, it meant a lot to me to be able to validate the techniques being used, being able to repeat them. So.
Did you find anything that was different?
Yeah, and like I said, basically based on the type of foliage that they needed to mark, like and where. So we don't have. I've never done a planting area like we had gone through up in Michigan. You had areas where it had been pre-logged. We had some virgin stuff in there that was real thick, and then we had some pre-log stuff. And in that area, that was kind of new to me, and the way they were marking through there. But it was, and you guys know, and on your videos, and I do suggest anybody go watch those because they are pretty telling. And the longer you watch that progression, the more telling it is, because you see the examples start to pop up. I rewatched it myself and thought, man, you can't get any more blatant. But the way they were twisting, on each side of a little corridor or marking through that type of specific area where you could basically walk any direction would be an equal walk. There was no apparent way to go, So I did see a different technique used in there. Yeah.
Very neat. People have speculated about them migrating back and forth. I think that it's possible that some of them do, but I know that we have Bigfoot sign in the winter up here too, so they're not all leaving. But
Right.
Do you think that they're interacting with the Bigfoots between here and there, are interacting with each other at all?
Over that distance, I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't suppose, only because I wouldn't be able to see the necessity in that. Of course, I'm not them, but yeah, I don't see the necessity to travel like that. And I think a lot of the travel is going to be clan based and direct family unit based, just from what we've seen through research, has been, where they're returning back to the same family units. And then you get the big males all getting up in the high alpine, real rugged stuff together. And we know those are the same individuals coming in and going. And at least in some of the family units here, we don't see them leaving. Basically, they may not be as active or be in one area as much or whatever during the winter, but we see their presence, like you said, still there. And I would assume other ones are like that as well. In other words, if ours aren't leaving in the winter, then there's probably others that aren't leaving in the winter. So who would there be to move around other than transient subjects? And then I don't see much reason to cruise that far, basically. Not to say they wouldn't. Who knows? That's not that big of a walk for them, really. 2.5 weeks they'd be up there, so no big deal.
That's true. Well, I often think about things like the way the native people used to run things, and they had big gatherings of tribes together where they would look for a mate so that they weren't marrying into a family unit or into the same clan of people. Like a lot of people from my tribe are from the Bear Clan, and you're not supposed, if you're Bear Clan, you're not supposed to marry a Bear Clan because that's your relative.
Mm-hmm.
So, I was trying to imagine if Bigfoot maybe has these functions where they're looking for mates. And just gonna ask you to speculate on that. What are your thoughts?
Well, I would certainly imagine that's going to be the point, because when we see our younger adult males start to leave the family unit, they range a few miles, let's say, away, 5 or 10 miles away, which is to them a hop, skip, and a jump. And then we know there's other family groups, within 30 to 50 miles. There's probably 6 or 7 different other family units in different directions within that range. And that's certainly, a day or two's travel. So I would assume you wouldn't have to go too far. Basically, you wouldn't have to go thousands of miles to visit prospective mates and other clans. So I would imagine there's certainly travel, but how far I would imagine would come out of necessity.
Okay. I want to give you the opportunity to share some of your favorite stories or experiences with your Bigfoot research and encounters. Take it away. I don't even know what to ask. What would you most like to share?
Well, that's kind of tough overall. There's quite a bit of gamut to pull from. I know people have heard a lot of them. I'll try to think of something just offhand out of the chute. That can be a little bit rough, actually, when you've got a lot of diversity going on. Things that people would like to hear, I guess. So not many people have heard about the PLSA site, or that is where we located the materials that we sent for Oxford University. And that was a really, really cool area. That's actually one that KRQE News had to put out entire damage control, misinformation productions, special investigations, and things like that to sway and stop our research. We even had a state senator propose law to block us from any further research. So, but that site's really interesting. That's right behind a very affluent neighborhood outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico, in the Sandia Mountains, and it's probably the most affluent neighborhood, actually. Each home up in there is multi-million-dollar homes and such, and they kind of have a cavity of homes inside of a valley structure just adjacent to the higher parts of the mountains, which go all the way up to 10,000, and extremely rugged. I mean, extremely rugged stuff. And there's some of the ruggedest country in the world. And but these houses are tucked in the base, and so they have activity and don't realize they're doing it. And a guy named Joe L. was hiking up there with two of his dogs. One was a black lab and the other one was a pit. And a big hand came out from behind some blockage of trees and grabbed his black lab with one hand and snatched it right in front of him off the trail and took his dog. And he actually went back and tracked that out and found the remains of the dog. And with just a head and a spine hung in a tree. And but he went in alone and tracked that animal out. And so we got those reports. And then there was some other stuff where, like, a lady in the parking lot at a trailhead area a couple miles below was hit in the head with a basketball-sized rock. And it hit her laterally at the parking lot. And so, and it's, it's just not paving or anything. It's just where the cars parked to get on the trailhead. And she had no idea what did it. And she was in intensive care in Albuquerque there. And of course, they didn't go on into detail about anything or investigate it or whatever. And but there was no mountain for it to roll off of or whatever. So we had some activity that was happening there. And then a buddy of mine was in that area, and he was he does a lot of climbing and a lot of other stuff. And he was in there with his Akita dog, and they got on the hillside there up above behind that neighborhood. And excuse me, I got cats and coffee and everything else going on. So, but up behind that neighborhood, and they ended up finding a big series of tracks, and they also tracked those up to where there was a large flat rock where they had apparently been smashing bone with another rock, probably crushing it to eat it. And then and they found a lot, some yucca fruit and some other things with bite imprints on them. And so we went up behind them and investigated the area, and that's where we had I had an archaeologist with me, had retired U.S. Forest Service 10-year veteran of that area was with us as well, and we had 6 or 7 people, and we got up in there, and that's where we discovered purposeful hair placement and stuff like that. So we actually got information from those subjects early, turned it into Oxford, and they wanted us to go get a new specimen off a live creature or something that was fresh, if it was possible. And so we were able to go back into there, find where the sentinel was, the big boy, and get him to move out. And when he moved out, we went in behind him and collected hair that was probably maybe 15 minutes off of him. So it still had a hydrated follicle and all that for that DNA test. And then that day, I think they counted, we didn't total them out, but we counted 170 something tracks. And between the big male and a couple smaller, narrower footed individuals, we assumed were females. And they were showing cooperative hunting, where the smaller ones would walk the game down the hill. They'd walk the deer down. You could tell they were doing it real quiet, no scuffing or sliding. And then the big male was down below waiting on all fours, and he had a rock that weighed over 100 pounds that he used as a projectile to take the deer out. And you could see everything from the tracks, and the rock was still there, and everything else. And so we got to glean. That's some of the cooler stuff. We got to glean an awful lot from being there. And then, but on I guess Ben's first trip, I didn't add that he took the Akita up. They caught an odor, and the Akita locked up and went between his legs and wouldn't move anymore. And this dog always goes with him in the mountains, climbing and all that stuff. So he's always out, and it ruined the dog. Dog won't get in the car anymore to go anywhere. And they said if we go in the hills, it won't get out. And so they had to carry the dog off the mountain, and carrying an Akita is not very easy because it wouldn't even walk. It would just whimper and cower. And so it's pretty interesting. And then on the last trip, we were up there, we were below a rock bluff, which was a large protrusion of granite that was sticking up. It was probably 30 or 40 feet high, and we were on a slope below it. And we were just a ways from it, just a little bit, 50, 60 feet, and a rock about half the size of a football, but football shaped, came over that outcrop, which was a long ways, came over that outcrop and landed, within 20 feet of us on the ground right there. So,
Wow, that's incredible. That's
mhm.
incredible. I'm feeling bad for the dog.
Yeah, right.
Um,
I know.
the dog that it took, had it showed an aggressive behavior
No,
towards it first?
neither dog or him even had a clue it was even there.
Oh, wow.
They were just going down the trail and a big hand reached out and snatched it. Boom. Ambush attack.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Got a quick lunch. And that individual's really old. He's got long 6, 7-inch gray hair. And he's really big, 23-inch feet. And he's missing quite a few teeth. So we look at the bite imprint and the yucca fruit and some other stuff, and we can tell his dentation, and he's missing quite a few teeth. So I would imagine at his age, and he's probably taking more opportune things than not. So, one that can just chase down deer easily or do whatever is one thing, but, having to, snatch a dog off the trail because it's opportunity, that probably comes from age related, I would imagine.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And if I got another dog, I probably wouldn't dare take it out.
Yeah, I won't. No way. Yeah, they're just, some of them tolerate them, even like them, or get playful with them. We've also found dogs that were used just like a juice bag. So just sliced and drained, and left on the ground. So, and another one we worked was one of the males we actually work with in our family unit. We research a lot. I don't know if it was the older or the younger adult or the big male, but one of them grabbed a German Shepherd while a guy was walking his dog broad daylight and took off with it, and it screamed, and he got to hear his dog screaming as it left and outpaced him. So, yeah.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah,
That's so
yeah,
sad.
yeah. So that's why I don't recommend anybody take a dog, to be honest. And everyone says, "Oh, they're my buddy and my partner, and they do this with me, and they understand." Yeah, they do until they don't. It's just, to me, it's not worth the risk.
Yeah. I wouldn't risk my dog either.
Mm-mm.
It's weird because my dog passed away in 2012, and we started doing Bigfoot research in 2015, and had a dream about my dog in the woods with me, and she was hiding and scared of the Bigfoot in my dream.
Wow.
And so I was like, okay, she's telling me she's scared even from beyond the other side or something.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's interesting that they would grab dogs, and yet, I mean, are there any reports of them grabbing people like that?
Direct reports, no, because there's no one left to report it. So,
True.
yeah, that's a little odd thing. I've heard of plenty of intimidation routines and things like that going on, but I've never heard of anyone watching anybody just get snatched. But there was two we do have watching their dogs get snatched. So,
Yes.
yeah, because if you have,
And I can
go ahead.
I've kind of seen, like, just in the people that I've talked to and the stories that I've heard of, from up here in the Midwest versus down south, it seems like our Bigfoot up here are a little bit more docile or friendlier.
Yeah,
Because I just don't hear as many.
That's what I've heard, and that could be be related to a lot of things. It could be just as easy topography as anything else, because like we are scattered riparian zones basically, so we're not contiguous. We do have massive amounts of forest, but we're not generally contiguous. So there is breaks of different types of zones and habitats, whether it be grasslands and river valleys and things like that. So let's say in a sense that in extreme dense forest for long belts, they can always just move over here, move over there, go over there. Here, they're almost forced to encounter more, in a way. So because there's not as much vast coverage of area, there's cells of coverage. So I think that the competition for zones, and then the travel corridors and the areas of open and everything else that they get exposed to, leaves them more vulnerable. And I think that they probably come into more situations where they feel that they have to vocalize or emote, territorial behavior or something like that just to protect themselves. Because that's how we've usually experienced it. And I've never like, I have had a family unit rush us in the Sandias, but that's in just a specific area that you just really shouldn't go. and period. You know what I mean? So they're very mean at that spot. And then everywhere else you can go and not have a problem, whatever. But they just don't like people in those spots. So we do have encounters like that. I really don't know why. I know that from the sizes and stuff we report, it seems like we have this greater number of larger individuals. And really I think it's just because that there's probably more places for the big males and stuff to go where people are not encountering their sign. And we don't have as many of those places as it goes. So we have extremely rugged stuff, and it's extremely remote. So they do have those spots, but it's not just anywhere. They can't just get away from everybody anywhere, basically.
And we have all the forest and the lakes and swamps and areas that people just don't go deep into because it's
Right.
just.
Yeah, and where we have that, often people live there as well. So when you have these river valleys and you have little farming communities and valleys, they're separated by vast amounts of other types of topography that's not as contingent to living in. So yeah, they're going to run into each other. And that's how the res is, because they don't modify the reservation much. And where people modify everything, cut all the trees down, clear all the land and everything like that, well, they don't have that issue. But like on the res, where the river valleys are basically wild. And then people do use them and they farm little farm plots, but they don't like cut the trees down around them or the wild vegetation or the weeds or anything like that. So you have people and them both in these densified regions. And in those places, we hear of a lot more adverse interaction, threatening each other basically on a pretty continual basis. So, and then as well, like at George's place, he's on the res, but it's a more open area. They have a family unit that, feeds their dogs bones and loves up on their animals, and they love the family, and everyone's, happy-go-lucky. So,
Well, that's a lucky thing.
Yeah. Oh, they're very fortunate. George Harvey, they've had a lot of experience because their family's just been basically connected to another little family. So,
Are they native people?
yeah. George is Navajo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And when his mom passed, not too awful long ago, the Bigfoots came down in the canyon behind him and were wooing and singing and stuff like that. So, yeah, they all know. She used to go feed them all the time. So,
what do you think that they are?
oh, just another type of people, one way or another. So, probably another human species. Who knows what? We're not there yet, so we don't know what the contributors are, and enough about the detailed genetics to understand. We have enough clues to make us wonder, and we have enough clues to put us on a couple of directions, but we don't have enough blatant information to have declared what they are, let's say. So I don't suppose very much. Most everything I get's either gleaned from research one way or another, be it their habits, and like if they have culture, basically the basis of culture and what makes people. They're definitely a type of human, simply because they're a bipedal primate, and they're fully bipedal. They're not partially bipedal. They're completely comfortable bipedalism. So that puts them in the human category, whether anyone likes it or not. It's impossible for them to be an ape, because once you're bipedal, you're no longer an ape. That's how science looks at it. So, I just think they're another type of human species, and whether or not they interbred or were hybridized through other means or whatever, I still don't think that makes them anything other than a people, so.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to mention, because we all have, as we find new ancestors in our tree, like we didn't know what Denisovan were, even though from the 80s they've been finding their remains, but they weren't mapped until recently, so we didn't have this name Denisovan, blah, blah, blah. But now we're finding that we have Denisovan DNA all over the world. Okay, so in South America and all over Asia and down through the Malaysia and the Philippines and all that, there's Denisovan DNA through all those cultures, even the islanders. So, but we didn't know until we found Denisovan, right? So in all these times we've been mapping the human genome, no one ever said, hey, look, here's Denisovan in our genome. See, so until we find the animal, classify that as a progenitor or whatever, then we don't know what's in the DNA anyway, even in ourselves. So we're going, yeah, we had some Neanderthalis DNA, but we didn't know that until we discovered Neanderthal by their own, and we're able to map that. So how many other human ancestors are within us? Probably 5, 6, 7 are in there, but but we can't tell when we look at our genome that looks like our genome. right? So we don't realize that's a contributed factor until we find the contributor. And so that's kind of, I see the very same thing happening with the studies into this. You know, I see it as just one of the other human ancestors. So certainly there's going to be either crossbreeding or some form or another of hybridization. And because it happened with all of them, why wouldn't it? You know, if they're close enough.
Absolutely.
You know, I guess those
Absolutely.
lonely, cold winter nights 10,000 years ago, you know, things happen.
Very awesome. Tammy, do you have questions?
Sorry, I'm just laughing at that. 10,000 years ago, it was a cold night. You never know.
Cold night, warm critter.
I've just been taking notes. Again, yes, I learned so much from you when we were out in the UP with you and walking around with you, Jenna and I, following you around like little fangirls, but it was okay because we learned a lot. I really like your views on everything and how everything is based on information and not just speculation and making up everything as you decide it's going to be. So I can really appreciate that, and I'm sure that we need a whole lot more of that in the Bigfoot community. But as far as questions, I'm kind of blank right now. Jenna, do you have anything that you wanted to ask? You're blank too.
Jenna is visiting her niece, and she's in a vacant room that's very echoey, so she's being very quiet tonight, unusually quiet.
Just tell her
Everybody can be.
Just tell her to whisper in the microphone, and it won't echo.
It doesn't work. All right.
Okay.
So we just get the pleasure of looking at Jenna. So yeah, we have a break coming up in like less than 3 minutes, but I love hearing your stories about encounters and interactions, and they seem different than what's going on up here. I've had some native people from the reservation next to mine talking about Bigfoot coming into their garden and stealing their vegetables and their fruits that they're growing. And, is that going on down there too?
Oh yeah. Same thing. That's pretty general. Going in, taking eggs and the whole 9 yards. I mean, if you have one that hits houses, they hit the houses, and that's that. So they get into the containers of the oats for the horses and the wild bird feeders and things like that pretty frequently. We have occasional bear. There hasn't really been any true bear signs seen for like 100 years at my one research area, but over that 100 years, they have been a couple seen going through. But we're talking about undoing latches on doors and going and taking the lids off cans, putting the lid back, reclosing the door and things like that. Not latching, but reclosing doors and things that bears don't do. And so a lot of that actually. I think they're basically opportunists. So
Yeah.
They see the opportunity, they're going to go for it. So I know on the Navajo res, they take the Napi fields. Those are the shared co-op fields that the natives all go up and produce and everything. And I know they hit that from all directions. So the group that lives behind George's house, they're transient between those fields and the river bottom. So that's kind of how they got to know George's family.
So my advice to the people up on the reservation sometimes is plant more and tell them just to take half.
Yeah. Well, they never seem to create too big an issue. I mean, that's one thing. Most of them we've noticed will never clean you out of anything. They may not leave you much, but they generally won't clean you out anyway. So, but there's a lot of animals that are like that. But, so there seems to be some kind of accountability in exchange that, if you have 4 peanut butter sandwiches, I'm just going to take 3, and I'll leave you 1. And so there's a lot of that. We don't see, we do see a little bit of aggressive acquisition. We have seen that in the past too, but most of the time it's pretty general. I don't think they like announcing their presence as a whole, but as well, we have them bugging people's houses on the res and us too until they put something out. And once they start putting something out, they quit bugging them. So like banging on the house or whatever, and then the people will throw out apples and then they'll quit banging on the house for a while and then do it again. So they get hungry. It's like they go bang on the house, say, "Hey man, you guys got anything to eat?" So yeah.
Oh, so that's what that means to you guys when they bang on the house.
Well, we've had them do that a couple times when we're cooking dinner and we didn't have anything out. So, and it was a subject where the previous tenants had thrown all their they were a bunch of bachelors and they had thrown all their leftovers over the deck down the side of the mountain, and animals, they just let everyone came eat it. And then when we moved in, had a lot of activity, but we weren't doing that. And we ended up doing it after a while. We ended up tossing him some stuff because, yeah, I mean, he almost knocked the trailer house off its foundations one night. So we had cooked fish and we were baking a chocolate cake, and yeah, and he came up and literally knocked the trailer house so hard. We thought a horse got out of the yard and panicked and hit the house, because it would have taken a horse in a panic, with its ass or whatever, to hit it that hard. And it seriously felt like he was going to knock it off the foundation. So, and he would just do that when we didn't have anything out for a while, and apparently, so.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to go to our commercial break. So stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back with Robert Kryder. Awesome. So we're on break, and
Okay. So I'm actually still broadcasting too. So I'm going to tell my people we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Thank you.
we'd love to see you. And anybody else out there who'd like to have us at their event, let us know. We can try to set something up. And tonight we are, I got to tell you, we're also on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram at She Squatchers Official. So please come subscribe and like our pages there. And we are here with Robert Kryder. Hi, Rob.
Hi.
We're so excited to hear more from you. Tammy has a question.
I do have a question. Well, actually, I have two. We can start with the one that I was going to ask you earlier. With the aggressiveness with the Bigfoot, do you think it might be related to maybe it being something in their DNA, maybe from interbreeding a little too closely with other clans for too long? Do you think that might have something to do with their mentality?
Not really. I mean, males and females, both of every species, tend to get aggressive when the time calls for it. And as well, all of them have diversity within that realm. So you can have parakeets and you'll have a mean one from birth and you'll have a nice one from birth. And I think that, more situationally with the aggression, and then habits. So how much have they had to be aggressive over their lifetime? How much is that a part of the necessity for them to live where they're living, and things like that? I think it's more than that. I don't think it's necessarily genetic trait that's creating anything like that, other than when we have higher intelligence, we have a higher propensity for mental problems. And so because we think and we dwell on things and we go over them, and so that causes us to develop these sometimes extreme behaviors. So, but we see that in people as well. And I don't think someone who has no empathy and goes out and murders without compassion, a human being, I don't think it's a genetic excuse or cop out. In other words, these are people in their own morality and decision based on what their experiences are and how they've grown and what they developed and who they turned out to be. And I see that same type of diversity there. But it's also apparent in wolves and other animals as well. So, you have rogues that turn into jerks, and then you even have other wolf packs take out the rogues when they start acting up. So it's and that's not a genetic thing as much as it is where you were born and how you ended up. So.
Agreed. Now, the other question that I have is a little off topic of the Bigfoot. What do you think about the other cryptids that everybody is exploring and searching for?
Well, I mean, I'm into all those things too. So I've always been into more of the reptile stuff, just personally, because I've always really liked reptiles and dinosaurs since I could even have my first memory at like 11 months. But yeah, I'm into all of it. The only thing and I know this throws me to the side in a lot of circles, but the Dogman thing, only because the work we've been able to do and the amount of time we've been able to put into the field and things like that, and to see which realities potentially exist, and then also being aware of a lot of reasons we could have realities like that, besides natural. So I don't know how much I put into the credence of the Dogman thing, only because to this day, we still haven't seen anything definitive. And people say, well, you say that for Bigfoot, and that's not true. I see thousands of examples of definitive evidence for Bigfoot, but I don't see any definitive evidence coming up it's still up in the air for debate, basically, with the very, very little we do see. And I think that, understanding psychology, understanding everything from military technological development to the natural order, there is a place that fits in, but I don't think it fits in where most people would assume it does. And so there was a reality to it, and there may still be. But as a species of reproducing animal, like what we'd have, the Bigfoots are global. They've been everywhere. They've been here the whole time. They're like deer or elk or a wolverine or anything else. They're a natural part of the environment one way or the other. Whereas the Dogman and a couple other things basically aren't. They go into the monster realm. Let's put it that way. We don't, because I mean, the way I look at it is this too. Every rendition we see of a Dogman isn't what I would assume it would be for anything authentic anyway. It's always a wolf type thing, a scary thing. It's always mean. It always, in reality, nothing's like that. So even great white sharks aren't always mean. So these are human perceptions of monsters from the mythical that we put up. So why doesn't a Dogman look like a basset hound, or anything else? Why is it always this snarling beast when even wolves aren't like that? They're beautiful animals, and they take pride in their beauty and caring for themselves. And there's nothing consistent I can see with 99% of the accounts and the information out there on that is consistent with an animal in the natural order. Because nothing is I'm just aggressive and going to eat you. Nothing in the world is like that. It wouldn't reproduce if it was like that. A black widow spider goes after her mate, I guess, to eat him when she's done, which is what they call her, a black widow. But I certainly put like any creature like a Dogman or something far above that. And I think the other one that stands out to me that I really actually want to address is the chupacabra trip. Because whoever called a canine animal, no hair, be it for mange or be it genetic, whoever called that a chupacabra needs to be dragged through the streets and tarred and feathered, because a chupacabra was a reptilian type of creature from Puerto Rico. And these have been seen in other areas, but they're general tropical zones. Almost never you ever hear these things outside the tropics. And these are a 3 to 4 foot tall, raptor looking, little heavier bodied creature with large hind limbs, short forelimbs, large claws, spines down the back that could go iridescent colored and could also move to some degree, like bird feathers do. So it had a dorsal ridge of feathers, or what they called spines. And then this is as reported by all the Puerto Ricans themselves and even the police that have seen them, shot them, everything else. It was never a canine. It was never anything on four legs. These things could jump 20 to 30 foot vertical, like you'd expect from a large raptor type animal, not from any type of canine stuff. So I think that those kind of things do bug, because as soon as they go out there in the mainframe, everyone that sees that canine type animal, which could be a new species, whatever, but everyone that sees that, oh, chupacabra, and then anything you want to put out about a chupacabra, that's what they're seeing. And they get lost in this terminology. And I think the same things happen with a bunch of the cryptids, because someone will just mention it and everyone just runs with it. No one even goes back to say, oh, well, what was a chupacabra? And so I watched over just a 2-year period. It went from this to this. And now it's the second thing, and no one even knows of the first. So to me, that's potentially even based on a disinformation campaign, to be honest with you, because that is one way we also hide realities we don't want to see, is we just mislabel and cross-label. And then every reference is off and mistaken and nothing ever makes sense. And so if we go like, oh, the goat sucker, well, there's not, the goat sucker could be anything. So now when everyone says chupacabra, you see a canine in your brain. Well, that sure does a good job to keep this other critter from the jungle down here that's really doing the dirty deeds. That keeps that out of the mind. Now we don't even think of this thing. So, but
Very
I guess,
true.
yeah. So, but I like all of it. And then the river monsters, lake monsters, love that stuff. Pterodactyls, flying reptiles, raptor reports. Tara, my fiance, has seen a raptor twice. Crossing the highway in the same spot, almost identical same spot. Her and her son saw it. And extremely fast at night, and but so I'm really into that stuff. I really like the big raptors, the giant rattlesnakes. That's one next year I want to go after, because I know a location where I found where a giant rattlesnake was inhabiting a cave with some big Norway rats, and these are like 30-pound rats, and I want to go in there after him. And he's got an 8-inch wide drag, which puts him 25 feet or more. So, and the only time you can even hear stuff like that is the Spanish colonists recorded finding snakes that big out here, and then some old rancher tales, and then they have cattle that are bit in the shoulder, which is 3-4 foot off the ground, and they'll have a 3 to 4 inch spread on the fang mark, and that would put a snake around 20 feet as well. So there's apparently a new species that the Spanish colonists pretty well wiped out when they were here, and then but we believe that there's still some around. They're not a western diamondback. So, and I did run across 2 years ago. I put it on Facebook, I think, but we did a video where I ran across one in the bush that was thicker than my leg, and I stayed. And western diamondbacks don't get as big as eastern diamondbacks do. So a little over 8 foot's the world record, or the record anyway. And but an eastern will get 10 foot, and so but this was. The one we found here was easily over 9 foot long and had a black head, but it wasn't what they call a blacktail. And I never really saw one that was identical to it, but really massive. I mean, as thick as my leg. So really, really a massive snake. And I got to spend about 30 minutes. I think it was a female, but I got to spend about 30 minutes in there with her. So, and I was I was within my arm's reach when she actually made the first noise. I didn't see her. The side of the body was next to me, and I didn't even recognize the side of the body. It was just too big.
I think that's one expedition that I would skip. I don't like snakes.
Yeah. No, I do got a thing. I like to photograph rattlesnakes. I've always really enjoyed doing that. So I've got a lot of spectacular close-up photographs of them. But they're not. If you don't have fear in your heart, you don't have a reason to fear. Then they generally don't become aggressive with you anyway. Mojaves and some species are a little different. They're little nut cases. They'll attack anything. But most of them are real docile by character anyhow. And the natives used to use them to judge character. So part of the snake ceremony was to go into the kiva and have a bunch of rattlesnakes under some cedar boughs, and everyone would sit around those cross-legged. And any man that the snakes wouldn't approach, they had to tell him to get out of the kiva because he couldn't be trusted with the secrets. Because they would hold an internal fear, and the animal would know that immediately. And they'll actually approach you and cruise up to you and be real cool if you don't have that fear. And so that's one of the ways they would judge and see what a man's true intention was. So using them.
Oh, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That really goes along with some of the things my mom taught me when I was little about not fearing, because then they won't know who you are.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah, exactly. going to cloud the whole thing, shuts everything off. Yeah.
Yep. 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 And I learned she was right, because as soon as I stopped fearing the bees, they stopped dive bombing me.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because everything wonders why you're scared. So I used to race wolf hybrids, and then I had a couple that were real close to me. One was named Tasha, and when I would meet anybody, I just look at her. And if she gave me a certain look, I never trusted that person ever. I just wouldn't. I don't care who the hell they were, what they thought, what they said, didn't matter, because she never ever was wrong. So she could tell immediately, because you carry that internally. And usually anybody that can't be trusted is scared internally. They have a reason to fear, right? So
I think they also know that humans in general, are dangerous when we're scared.
oh yeah. Well, most things are, right? I mean,
Yeah.
what won't attack you when it's scared? It'll either cower and die or attack you. Just about every
Right.
species out there, it'll either cower and die or attack, period. And I've been attacked by a mouse. So, I mean, I've literally had a mouse jump out of a box at me that was cornered, squeaking and trying to bite me. And before it took off, yeah. Like,
That's a brave little mouse.
yeah, I got a kick out of it. I really did. I thought, hell yeah, buddy, nice. Like you'll make it. So
Awesome. Well, we have a couple questions in our chat room. I see Sherry's asking if Bigfoot leaves rock art behind.
rock art, I don't know. The only thing I've ever seen, I mean, there's tons of stacked rocks out there, and people often attribute it to the Sasquatch because they don't realize what else has been out there over the last 1,000 years, or how long two rocks will stay stacked on each other. But I've never actually seen where they stacked rocks things. The only thing we've seen you could say was art, where I've seen designs made in the sand with their fingers and with the stick. And I've seen where they've taken mud from the riverbed, or from the edge of the bank of the river, the clay, and spread it on a rock face, and then draw designs in that, like kids finger painting. Where they smear mud on the rock face and then just draw in that. And it's not, I've never seen them, they don't draw like cows or stick figures or people or deer or anything like that, but they do swirls and spirals with lines and things like that. I've actually seen them make the same. If you make a spiral, go from the outside to the inside, and then right when you get to the center, draw a straight line out of that sideways. I've seen Native Americans do that, and I've seen the Bigfoots do that. So we've seen that actually more than once, that same thing. So, and you've got their handprints and feet prints leading up to a spot, and then they're in the sand and they're drawing on the sand and they walk away. So you see what did it, who did it, so they're doing something. They are making patterns.
Okay, so that is very interesting to me, because I've always been interested in petroglyphs and pictographs, the ancient rock carvings or artwork on stone. And the circles, the spirals like that, the circles within circles, are what is believed to be the way that the natives were drawn. That's what, if you do a Google search and do petroglyph portal and search under images, that's what comes up.
Yeah, it also means up and down. So if you're following Native American panels and we can suppose they say all kinds of stuff. We could read stories, or if you'll look at the spirals and go, okay, that's me to go up or down, and look at that inside of information. We do that to follow trails and go find all their habitation. Because a good majority of these panels are actually topographical instruction maps for how to go and move through the area and get to each little village and encampment. And when you realize that and you use them for that, you can go to all these encampments nobody knows about. And so because water spirals a certain direction when it goes down a hole. Okay, so if the opposite of that means up, the positive of that means down. And so that's an up and down symbol. And then if you have like a hook shape after that, it means you go up until you have to turn around something. And you won't know what that is. They don't show you what that is. They just say you have to go up and around. And then when you go up, you'll walk and you'll run into something that you have to go around. And then that's so the maps and symbols are often just like that. That's why we'll have a U shape, an upside down U shape, and then a squiggly line that's got a hook on it. Well, that means go back and forth and hook to the right. And people say, oh, that's a serpent with an arrowhead. No, it isn't. It's literally a direction on the ground. And if you'll follow these, you'll go to all kinds of cool stuff. And so knowing that, but if they don't know that, you're going to read into it what you think it means. And so So see what I'm saying? So also we've seen where, that's a symbol for what you'd call, wormhole technology. So a ship that travels through time. So they'll show a diagram of a craft, they'll show the power source, and then they'll show a spiral with a line from center to the other center and back out again. And that's what that means. That's a dilation point. So a lot of these things, when we say like the word portal, that's a really modern invention, believe it or not. So we say portal for everything in the world. So if you have a time dilation event to where you have an absence of time in a region, you can go into that and come out somewhere else. It's not actually a portal. It's an absence of time and space in a certain point. So we look at things like, oh, it's got to be a physical doorway because that's what we comprehend, because we can't comprehend a spot with nothing in it. And so what you're doing is if you go through nothing, you come out of the nothing at whatever other side the nothing was, which could be 10 feet or on the other side of the universe. So doorways and dimensional portals aren't really what we think. This is our inception of them, so we can show them to each other and talk about them and put them, let's say, in a movie. Because if not, it wouldn't be any fun. You would just vanish and reappear. And so, you don't have a way to graphically show a portal doorway opening up in front of you. Because I know people that have been through that experience, and there was nothing that they saw in front of them whatsoever. And being in it, they still were not removed from reality. Even though they went a half mile in 5 or 6 seconds, they were still not out of reality. They could see reality. It felt thick and heavy, and then they got dizzy, and then foggy, and then everything cleared up, and they were somewhere else. But there was no structural door, So you basically have what you'd consider an event horizon with at a 0 point. So there's no threshold. Let's put it that way. It's kind of hard to go there, but yeah.
I love this stuff.
Yeah. And who knows if that's what they're drawing or not, because as well, it's real, you take someone like even a child, or you take somebody that's severely autistic or whatever, and a spiral is just following the line you just made and keep turning. And that's a really natural thing to do and get involved in and to do those kind of things. And so there's a lot of reasons we could be seeing like each different symbol or whatever, and I don't think we can really infer too much on what the particular meaning would be, other than just let's witness it and then maybe see where they do it, when they do it, if it's repeating. But like that group we studied, how many years, and I've seen twice where they did something like that, and neither one were identical. It wasn't matching and it wasn't structured. So whether or not they were just scribbling information that was information or just making shapes, I don't know.
Gotcha. We actually did follow footprints that up a gravel pit hill to where they disappeared at circles within circles within circles that were just perfectly into the sand, and they didn't descend the hill at all. So that was quite interesting. And when we put that with what the native elders were telling me about them being able to travel through the ground like that, that to me was interesting. So I like to collect all the different viewpoints of what those symbols or those shapes mean.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I love your take on it too. That's just more to think about, more to explore on this end of it, for me anyway. I do have a question in the chat room. Ceiling Cat is wondering, this is an interesting question that's never come up before, about cattle mutilations, if they could be related to Bigfoot and maybe not aliens.
Well, I certainly think so. I've thought of that for a long time, or both. Sometimes when we see cattle mutilations, sometimes we see certain aspects and traits that I wouldn't normally attribute to the Bigfoots. Other times I see aspects and traits that we would. And using cuts and stuff like that isn't out of the question. So I just I pulled out some information just the other day for another interview I did, where I demonstrate and I show where it was a kill site what they call kill consumption sites, where they'll take larger animals like deer, horses, cattle, and stuff like that they raid, and they'll take them to these specific locations to part them out and eat them and consume them. They'll usually be pretty protected places. And in these places, we found some really unique remains. One of them in particular was a cow leg, where it was from the hoof to the shoulder, the whole thing, and had been completely fleshed right down to the bone, clean, no bite marks except at the scapula. And they had bitten off the whole edge of the scapula with the big primate teeth marks where they just bit the whole edge of it off. And then not another like canine mark or anything else. And then at the very bottom, there was cut marks that looked like they were done by a blade. And they were only on one spot. And it would be where the artery was on the leg. So it looked like they had actually cut that artery. And there was probably maybe 10 to 15 cuts in the same spot, where you had repeated cut 10 to 15 times all the way to the bone. And that had to be done by a tool. So that wasn't done by teeth or anything. It was done by a very, very, very sharp blade. And which, of course, in nature are really easy to come by. It's not hard to come by sharp blades in nature. So you can get semi-sharp blades, about as sharp as the average man's pocket knife, just breaking a rock. And then, of course, you can surpass the finest razor by using obsidian or cooked stone, like flint or whatever. So the possibility that they would be taking certain organs or body parts and using a cutting tool, it would not be out of the question. That would leave a surgical type mark, because you're talking like obsidian blades and things. They're beyond surgeons' tools. They're actually better. And so if you're using things like that, I could certainly see why someone would go, wow, it had a surgical cut. But of course, we see both. Certain gland acquisitions and things like that, I don't see as being necessarily the Bigfoot. When it's just lymph material or something like that, I wouldn't see why you'd go to all that effort to take out a single eye, a tongue, and the lips, and nothing else. But those are all part of the lymph or fluidic system in the body. So they do have a commonality with potential what would be alien or whatever they are, reptoid subterranean creatures, whatever those things are, do seem to go for just lymphatic tissues or nervous system. But of course, then when you see a whole hindquarter gone and nothing else, and it looks like it was cut and removed from the animal, but it wasn't poachers, there's no tracks, the animal's been carried to where it was and things like that, I think those probably are Bigfoot related. Just taking what he can take and to carry and go. And so it's a lot easier than trying to rip a leg off an animal. You end up with the bone and most of the meat still on the animal. So, you have to separate it somehow. So I think that it's a combination.
Is it something that they would maybe go back for more of later, and maybe the animal was just found before they could return?
I don't know. We could only suppose, right? I would suppose so. If it's in a location, they wouldn't fear that something would be maybe watching the carcass. I know that they're aware of what our domestic animals are and the difference between our domestic animals and the natural animals. I'm sure through research and just what's been shown in the evidence, I'm sure they're aware of that. And I'm sure they're also aware, even dogs are aware of, that when you do something, it could bring it back home to you. So if I go take a cow, someone may come looking for the cow. And so I think that has I think goes either way. It's just situational.
We have less than 1 minute left on the show, and I want to give you the opportunity to tell the listeners how they can find you and the products that you create real quick. Could you give them your information? Yeah,
no problem. Thank you for the opportunity. So you can find us on the web at KryderExploration.com. And we also are on Facebook at KX Cryptid Hominin Research Group, New Mexico Bigfoot. And you can find us also, we have a Kryder Exploration group and page for our mostly our other research besides the Bigfoot stuff. We're on YouTube at YouTube/Kryder Exploration. Our channel is called KX Space Kryder Space Exploration. And then one of the products, we sell a kind of a little line of different exploration stuff, but we actually, and I've designed and built my own audio recording equipment. And the premier unit right now is called a KX-PD3. And again, I appreciate the opportunity here. KX-PD3, it's a parabolic microphone. It's based on a tactical platform. So it's unlike everything else out there. It's built for rugged field use. We just had reports of human conversation where they could understand the words at 5 miles. And so that's from one feather up in the Pacific Northwest. So they heard a couple arguing and could understand what they were saying, tracked them down, figured out where they were. There was 5 miles away. So we're real happy about that one. So
that is so awesome. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for joining us, Rob. Mm-hmm. We'll hope to see you another time on the show. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Okay, to all my listeners, I hope everyone's doing good this morning. This evening. It's not morning yet. I guess it's still relatively early, huh? So I'm going to bring up our chat window now where I can see our people and potentially chat with everybody. So I don't know what my lag time is at the moment. It could be a few minutes. Hopefully we're still streaming. Let's see who we've got here and get some highs going on. Okay, let me say hi to everybody. Strange Land, World Bigfoot Radio. Hey, Duke, what's up, brother? Audrey Allen, hi, good to see you. Bigfoot, Michigan, Bob, Bigfoot Radio. Digger Dog, good to see you. Indiana Cryptid. Who's your Squatch? Cosmic Floor. Mr. Duffy, good to see you. Cosmic Floor. We got Strange Land. Ramelia Acosta, good to see you. Richard King, as always, good to see you, brother. All right. Illinois Sasquatch, good to see you. I think you have a dish on the way. Actually. All right. Scottish Wild Man. BF, Strange Land. Boy, you guys have been busy. Alpha Omega. Hopefully you can hear me. Everything shows good on my line for being able to hear. Okay, you guys seem to be way behind me. Yeah, so I'm running two different software bouts here. So what happens is I'm running OS or OBS, kind of a live studio, and then I'm running the Windows for the Skype, and I have to allot microphones and cameras for each program, and sometimes they don't work correctly, and I have to reload them. So trying to see here what's coming in. All right. Well, you guys have been so busy, I have to try to catch up here a little bit. Info. Yep. So we're also going to be, you're going to catch us. Oh, and I want to say, everybody, please run over to the She Squatchers channel. Just search them all over Facebook. You'd search them on YouTube and everything, and get over there and sub those guys. That'd be really great. Share us, of course. Everyone that's been here knows that we're shadow banned like crazy. Our subscribers are removed continuously. They're messing with our stuff all the time. People write us in, and so make sure to either subscribe, go back and recheck your subscription, check your notifications to see what we're going to be putting up. I got more and more going. So tonight was She Squatchers. Tomorrow we got another one, and it's a brunch with Bigfoot, and that'll be on November 18th with BMR Rod Carr. And then on November 30, we are going to be on Discover Sasquatch with Chris Reinhardt. And then we've got another one, a couple more coming up as well. So another one that's going to come up is Uncomfortable Podcast with Eric. Can't read the last name there. So yeah, we're going to be bipping in here left and right. Okay, so I'm going to read some of these comments here and see if anything. I know you guys get in your own little conversations. I think that's awesome. Let's see if we've got anything directed to me, and we'll figure it out. Oh, great series on World Bigfoot Radio. Oh, thanks. Yeah, I just did the World Bigfoot Radio with Duke. What a great guy. Amazing guy. I think we got into some pretty good stuff. Was able to give him some cool pictures that were showing what we're talking about. That was a nice change. So we're still looking. So bear with me here while I read down the list. So I know dead air is a really horrible thing, but thank God I'm not a content creator, and I'm a investigator and a researcher. That way I can always just say, hey, I just suck at this. But what we're doing is right now I'm looking for any direct questions. A lot of comments on what we were talking about. And most of you guys, I think, know that I can't read these or respond to them. Oh, shout out to the She Squatchers. I'll let them know, Mr. Duffy. I'll let them know you gave a shout out to them. Cosmic Fleur. Hey, Rob. Hi. Mouse that roared. Yeah, Digger Dog. Mouse that roared. Yeah, that mouse was a trip, too. And I did get a big kick out of it. I've seen a mouse back up a cat. So, but one went after me that day. And I did get back, too. Yeah, Mr. Duffy seen use rocks to make statues, sticks, and grass. That's cool. And I always assumed they kind of did. I just had never seen anything I could get right into it. Fairbanks, Alaska. Yep, good evening to you, Richard. How's the weather up there, buddy? I bet you guys are colder than we are right now. I know Tara and I went and visited Fairbanks not too long ago. Actually, it's been a few years now, I guess, but we went up there to Anchorage and then visited my good buddy and my niece in Fairbanks. I still have family up there. Cool place. Really cool place. And we went up, I think wasn't too cold. I think it was -12 or -20, something like that. Illinois Sasquatch. Yeah, I have timber rattlers and moccasins and copperheads there. Damn. I guess watch where you step, huh? We don't have to worry about anything but rattlesnakes, really. All right, Bomb, I'm doing great. Yeah, I'm doing good, Bomb. I'm doing really, really good. I'm getting a lot of things taken care of. Just, since we did Michigan and then came back and ended up getting the sickness, yeah, I've been so far behind. It's barely getting to where we're up and getting caught up now. So I'm seeing a lot of stuff about audio issues. I hope that got cleared up. I'm gonna have to go back and watch the live stream and then and see what happened. Work from home, can't hear anything on my end. Can't hear Robert. Okay, so in the beginning you probably could not hear me. And so I think that got taken care of. Let's look down. Now remember, when we're on doing this, it's a simulcast, so I cannot see the chat, and they cannot see our chat. So what we did with them was over Skype, and I'm putting this through OBS up into YouTube. So this is just a copy simulcast, and so they won't be able to, and they're not able to read. That's why you don't get any answers and stuff. They're not able to read anything you guys are putting in here. So. Daddy Moon 666 found quite a few interesting tree structures in Sandy area. Absolutely. Some of the largest, craziest structures and tree manipulations we've ever seen are in the Sandias. I've never even seen anywhere else stuff that large as what we've seen in the Sandias on the backside. So let's see what else we got here. Andrew Stoper. Yeah, be happy to show you, man. I mean, there's certain things everything does when it moves through the environment, and it says here you'd like to come and learn the ways of tracking the wood people. Well, absolutely, I'd like to show you. There's no problem with that. There's certain, and it's been repeated now. We've over a massive area, all the way from Oregon, Washington, down to Southern California, all the way to now Michigan. And Texas on the south end, we've had them doing the same thing. So let's see what else we got here. Wish to see their mannerisms. Yeah, so do I, Mr. Duffy. I'd love to be able to just sit and watch what they're doing when they don't think anyone else is around. You guys are relating some cool stuff. So if you're listening to this and you haven't seen the chat yet, I'd suggest going in there. I can't cover it all, but people are going over some really neat stuff. Little interesting stories about things, orbs and lights and a lot of different things. Finding markers. Let's see what else we got here. Boy, you guys are just going. You know, it's interesting and it's a little difficult because the live stream is so delayed from what I'm doing right now to what I see you guys are getting on the YouTube end is so delayed. It's almost 5 to 10 minutes now. So it's interesting. So what I'm seeing coming up in my live stream actually happened like right now. Looks like we're just at the part where I talked about them drawing, and that was a good 15, 20 minutes ago. So this is gonna make it difficult to go back and forth.